to worry. I'm not going to lead singing. Ben's going to lead this in Trust and Obey in a minute. I know that everybody's like, oh no. But this way it'll be on key and it'll be an up-paced, fast tempo because we're doing all 5 verses. So let's start our class with a word of prayer. Roger.
Let's pray. Our most gracious Father in heaven, we are so thankful for this day and this opportunity to come together. We are so thankful for our brothers and sisters here, so thankful for what your Son has done for us, that we could come together and praise you in song, which you so richly deserve. We do pray, Father, that you'll watch over all those who are sick and ailing at this time, that you be with the pregnant mothers that are expecting and help them to for this class and our ability to consider what it is the lesson from these songs. We pray that you'll help us to understand songs and why we sing, that we might take that message to heart. So thankful that we're choosing trust and obey at this time and how important that is to our faith. And please be with us as we sing. It's in Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Okay, so over 100 years ago, one of the big things people would do is they would have what they call a tent revival meeting. What they would do is they would buy a big tent and go set it up in a field, and they would have meetings, or they call them meetings, but basically it was a congregational meeting every night for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. And they would bring in people to speak with big names, or they would bring in singers or whatever to fill the place up and have these revivals. Well, in 1886, Daniel Towner was leading the singing at one of these, and he was one of these big name song leaders and stuff. And in the revival, afterwards, sometimes they would have these things called a testimony meeting where people would stand up and say something. Well, in one of these, a guy said, I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to trust and I'm going to obey. And he's like, ooh, as any good preacher would, he writes that down. And he puts the story on a little note card and he mails it to this other guy, Jay Sammis. And Jay Sammis said, oh, great, that would make a great song. So he wrote the lyrics to Trust and Obey, and Daniel Towner then put it to music. And so both of these guys were prolific writers. They didn't always collaborate, but they had a bunch of different stuff. They knew each other, I believe, through the Young Men's Christian Association. And so they've each written over 100 songs or wrote the music to 100 songs. And there's some of these are in our songbooks even today. And again, this was over 130, 140 years ago. So it's a timely old song, and it's one of my favorites. So with that, I'm going to ask Ben to lead it for us.
All right, Mitchell said we were going to keep it upbeat, sing all 5 verses.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what a glory He sheds on our way. We do His good will. He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey. But to trust and obey, not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the sky, but His smile quickly drives it away. Not a doubt nor a fear, not a sigh nor a tear can abide while we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus to trust and obey. Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but our toil he doth richly repay. Not a grief nor a loss, not a frown nor a cross, but it's blessed if we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. But we never can prove the delights of his love until all on the altar we lay. For the favor he shows and the joy he bestows are for those who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Then in fellowship sweet we will sit at his feet, or we'll walk by his side in the way. What he says we will do, where he sends we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Thank you, Ben. So when we open up our songbooks, there's a little line at the top usually, and it tells you a verse reference. Well, this is from the original printing of Hymns New and Old in 1887, and it was published by Daniel Towner. So this was the verse that he intended. So what's the verse? Psalm 25:14. The secret of the Lord is for those who fear him, and he will make them known his covenant. But you know, I like all of Psalm 25, and so I decided to add a couple more verses. Make me known your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day. I could have put this one or Psalm 23, and it could have covered every verse in the song because it's so instructional. My favorite, of course, is Sacred Selections. And Sacred Selections put 1 Samuel 15:22 in there, where it says, Samuel said, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offering and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. And then we could go to Psalms 4. Offer the sacrifice of righteousness and trust in the Lord. So sometimes I like to reword things and paraphrase a little bit so that we can put it in English that we use, because I don't use the big words very much in my life. What does this mean? Acting righteous by doing the will of God is the sacrifice God really wants. He really wants us to do what he said. Sure, he loves it when we pray, he loves it when we sing, and we offer, and of course we understand that in the tabernacle, there was a thing of incense, and the incense represented prayers of the saints. That was an offering. But the offering that God really wants is our obedience. He wants us to do what he said. Okay. This song is instructional. Okay? What do I mean by that? Help me out. This is class participation. How is this song instructional? Mr. Taylor.
I believe it gives it lays out what he wants us to do. I mean, it's like following a map, the road map. You know, this past summer, the Vacation Bible School was follow the road map.
Yep.
And God has it laid out the blueprint is there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know, it's clear.
Okay? Any other suggestions how this song is instructional? Roger.
Teaches faith.
It teaches faith. It doesn't use the word faith, though. What word does it use?
Trust and obedience.
Right. But that's what faith is, exactly. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
I'm sorry, Lee.
No.
I was just reminded, when we were trying to get a building at Smoky Point, the contractor told us it's when we were talking about permits and that, the contractor said it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So in his view, just do it and then say you're sorry later. But that verse at the front of the song, one of the Psalms you were saying that you had shown on the screen was, God likes the trust and the obedience better than you coming to him asking for forgiveness.
Yeah. Saul did that. He was like, let's just ask for forgiveness later. And what happened to Saul? The kingdom was taken away from him. So there's a good Bible example of not doing what that contractor wanted to do.
That's what it's called a con.
Oh, that wasn't necessary. Oh. Okay, so here's the first verse of the song. And again, I decided to do a little paraphrasing. When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, when you do what God says in the Bible, what a glory he sheds on our way. God lights your path to lead you safely, right? While we do his good will, he abides with us still. When you're doing good, God is going to be with you. And with all who will trust and obey. And he offers this to everybody who will trust him and obey him. The only way to be happy in Jesus is to trust him and do what he says. Does that make sense? This is something that we all need to work on. And that's why I like this song so much, is because one day, not too many years ago, because I'm a slow learner, it hit me that I should trust and obey. Because, growing up, you're like, oh my goodness, this song's got 5 verses and it says the same thing over and over again. And what I should have done is actually absorbed it and understood that what it was telling me was to trust and obey. Okay, so I wanted to throw out a verse. 1 John chapter 5, verse 1. Whoever believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God, and whomever loves the Father loves the child born of him. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and observe his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that overcomes the world, our faith. What do y'all think? Yeah, it does. Sounds like we should be encamped along the hills of light and rise or something. But anyway, this is a great verse to help, a series of verses to help us remember that his commandments are not burdensome. We have to be obedient, but he's not asking for that much. He's just asking for your life. Just devote your whole life to him. That's all you have to do. And I'm not being sarcastic there. That's what you have to do. It's simple. Once you give yourself over to Christ, it's simple. We find it's hard when we don't give ourselves over, right? When we try to hold on to something and there's that tension because we are holding on. We're trying to serve 2 masters, exactly. Okay, I wanted to throw this one out here. This is a rather long reading from Luke, so if you want to turn over there in Luke chapter 12. But I'm putting in this specifically for trust and obey. And he said to his disciples, "For this reason I say to you, do not worry about your life as to what you will eat, nor for your body as to what you put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap. They have no storeroom nor barn, and yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than the birds? And which of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his lifespan? If then you cannot do even a very little thing, why do you worry about other matters? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, but I tell you, not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. But if God so clothed the grass in the field, which is alive today and thrown into the furnace, how much more will he clothe you, you men of little faith? When it says toil and spin, if you all don't know what that is, toiling is like working hard, and spinning is like they would spin wool or cotton to make fabric, to make yarn, to make fabric. So if a woman wasn't actively cooking, nursing, cleaning a baby, or this or that, she was spinning yarn. And the guys were supposed to be toiling in the field. So when you see toil and spin, it's talking about everybody working hard. And birds don't work hard at all, do they? Well, they do, but to our eyes, we just see them fluttering about, right? Let's keep reading. And do not seek what you will eat or what you will drink, and do not keep worrying, for all these things the nations of the world eagerly seek. But your Father knows that you need these things. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to charity. Make yourselves money belts which do not wear out, or unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near, nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So with that reading in mind, here's the next question for you. If we worry about things we can't control, are we really trusting in God? No. Now, I know there are a lot of folks who struggle with anxiety, and I'm not saying that this one verse just covers the whole thing, because anxiety is a tough thing to deal with. But how many of us are really trusting when we're worrying about stuff? There's a lot of stuff that people worry about that they can't control, right? And what are we supposed to be doing? Trusting in God, exactly. Other thoughts on this? I'm not afraid of silence. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
One of the verses I think of with anxiety that I think is interesting is when Paul is listing in 2 Corinthians 11 all the pains and difficulties he goes through, or he's gone through for the gospel. After he lists all these horrible things, he says, apart from such external things, in 2 Corinthians 11:28, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Many translations will say daily anxiety or worry.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because to me, it helps me think of it's a helpful counterweight to that Jesus is very and other things Paul will say, do not worry in Philippians 4, right? But it helps me sometimes there are things that still, even in our faith, will pressure us because we are concerned about them because they have emotional weight to us. And it helps me to see that Paul did have anxiety about things that mattered. That doesn't necessarily run counter to all of Jesus' teachings or Paul's teachings even about not being anxious, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a difference between a healthy concern for brethren and the welfare of our brothers and sisters and worrying about the national debt. I'm trying to pick something ethereal,
Sure.
because there's not one blessed thing that any of us can do that's going to actually fix the national debt. Now, there are other things that sure we should be concerned about, but there are things in this world that we cannot control. We cannot affect them, so we should not worry about them. I saw a hand over here. Yeah.
What you're saying is exactly right. I just want to make an additional point.
Oh.
It doesn't apply to every aspect of our life. It doesn't absolve us of our responsibility. If I'm out of a job, I don't sit at home and say, I'm trusting God's going to bring me a job, right? I know what I have to do to obey him. So I have my responsibility as a person. Trusting and obeying is doing his will, and we know what his will is for us.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful to define what are we trusting and what are we obeying.
Right. So trusting does not absolve you of the obeying part. Does that make sense? Josh?
Just a little flavor on my answer for that. No, it's so black and white to the question that you asked. But I just want to recall this back to the fact that if you are someone who struggles with worry, which I think we're human, all of us do,
Yeah.
right? And if I hand God that thing 100 times in one day and then I end up taking it back, as long as I keep trying to hand it to him, and as long as I keep pushing it what I know the right answer is, that's where grace comes in.
Yep. Yep. Was Mr. Taylor?
There are circumstances and there are things, both job-wise or anything else, like what Brett was talking about. There are things that, and again, what Ben also said, it's totally out of our control.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. I've got, I don't want to take much of your time, but there are circumstances and situations that have come up over the last eight and a half years that I've had to get over in the corner, get in the closet, get on my knees, lay down, prostrate, and say, Lord, this is all you. I have to trust you, but it's just too much for me to, comprehend.
Yeah.
It's easy to sit here and say that, it's to do it, but when the rubber meets the road, and unless you've been in those situations, you might want to be careful how you think about that thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I got lots of slides. Okay, so if we look at the other account of this same kind of thing, I'm sure Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount more than once. And when he preached it this time, he said, but seek first the kingdom of his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So do not worry about tomorrow. And here's what I want to emphasize. For tomorrow will take care of itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. If we focus on the here and now and what we can do as Christians, it's going to do us a lot more good, and it's going to get us a lot farther down the road than worrying about far in the future that we can't affect them now. Focus on, another way to say that is that there are immediate things that you can do to further the cause of Christ, to help yourself, to help your loved ones, rather than spend time in the distant future worrying. Roger.
I was just going to say that worry is a motivator.
The real problem we have is recognizing what we can and cannot control.
Yeah.
And for Paul worrying about the churches, for us worrying about our children, there are things we can do, and then the rest we give to God.
Right.
And I think with the rest of the world, they don't know the give it to God part.
Right.
And that's what drives them nuts.
Exactly. So let's move on to verse 2, because we got 5, and I'm looking at the clock. Not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the skies. His smile quickly drives it away. Not a doubt nor a fear, not a sigh nor a tear can abide while we trust and obey. And of course, Psalms 23, so you can pull it at just about any song. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Another one I like, and I like this one just because we think of clouds as being bad, and we look up in the sky and we're like, oh, clouds or whatever, but God put a rainbow in the sky as a sign, so I thought I would throw that verse out there. When the bow is in the cloud, then I will look upon it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. Do you guys have any other verses that come to mind when you think of this verse? I got a couple more, but anyone else have one that comes to mind? If you do, just shout it out here, and I'll work on one of these for a minute. His smile quickly drives us away. And I think Psalms 119, may your face shine upon your servant and teach me your statutes. My eyes shed streams of water because they do not keep your law. That's some humility right there. That's understanding that what we need is God, and we need to have a sense of contrition when we realize that we're in sin and turn ourselves around from that. Mark chapter 11, verse 22. And Jesus answered, saying to them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says is going to happen, it will be granted him. Therefore, I say to you, all things for which you pray and ask, believe that you have received them, and they will be granted you. Whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father who is in heaven will also forgive you your transgressions. Notice in that verse there that there's both trusting and obeying, and the part of obedience there is forgiveness in that particular verse. Because that's something we all have to work on as part of obedience, right? Yeah.
I just think about Philippians 4:7. It talks about, the peace that passes all understanding.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And I see this whole song actually as saying
Yeah.
not a sigh, not a tear, not a grief, not
Yeah.
anything. And it's trusting and obeying God is directly related to that peace.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great one. So here's a question. Do we turn to God when we face adversity? Sometimes. Now, there's some people who, when they face adversity, the first thing they think about is turning to God, right? Does everybody feel that way? So if you go talk to our elders, you'll find that they spend a lot of time calling people and talking to people and trying to get with people. And one of the reasons they take attendance is so they can see if somebody's slipping through the cracks. And I'm not thinking of a specific story, but I know from talking to elders enough over the years that they'll call somebody and they'll say something like, how's it going? What's going on? We're missing you. Is there anything we can do for you? Can we pray for you? Well, I got a lot of stuff going on in my life right now. When something like that happens, are they turning to God in adversity? Thoughts? Mr. Taylor.
It's most evident that they are. If you don't turn to him when I could take up the rest of the time. But I'm telling you right now, you have to turn it over to him because there's circumstances that are just way too big for you. I guarantee you. And a lot of people in here know, and it's one of those things when you're faced with it, you gotta dig deep and look at his attributes, and to know that when we yoke up to Christ, he said, give me, and no burden, bring it to me. Man, if we didn't have that, we'd like the rest of the world.
We'd be lost.
Yeah.
Cassandra.
Along the lines of trusting, obeying, forgiveness, adversity, all of these, I was struggling with some people in my life because I was really, really angry at them, and I couldn't talk to them. It wasn't working. And I turned to my very wise friend who's a Christian, and she said, pray, bless them and change me. Bless them and change me. Every single time you think of them, every single time you have an angry thought. Yeah. And it really helped open my eyes to what they were struggling with versus what I was struggling with, and how I could help them rather than be angry.
Yeah.
So bless them, change me.
Isn't that a great mental attitude to take when you can get to that point where when you have that thought about somebody, you're like, bless them. Yes, over here.
You can't hate someone if you're blessing them.
Yeah.
Let's see. I was going to say sometimes it could be that you don't want to feel like a, like you don't want to feel like a burden or anything to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, sometimes it can be hard asking for help because, like when I was growing up, I basically had to be like kind of had to be the adult for my mom. And so I have the mindset sometimes of like, I don't want, I couldn't stand that as a kid. So why would I want someone to do that for me when I'm an adult? And so sometimes it can be having trouble to ask for that help because then it feels like, oh, I hated that when my mom did that to me as a kid, so I don't want someone to be burdened like that.
Yeah. Now, y'all know that I love the story of Hezekiah and Sennacherib, and the folks at Lake Hills know that I preached a sermon there called Trust and Obey and told that story, and I preached a sermon here using the same stuff, so I'm looking at the clock. We're gonna skip 2 Kings chapter 19, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, read 2 Kings, start about chapter 18, go through about chapter 20. Great stuff. Okay, verse 3. Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but our toil he doth richly repay. not a grief nor a loss, not a frown nor a cross, but it's blessed if we trust and obey. Matthew chapter 11. We've already talked about this one, Matthew chapter 11. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus isn't saying he's going to take your burdens. He's saying he's going to exchange your burdens for his. So you have to wear the yoke, but it's his yoke, and his yoke is easy and light. So that yoke, in this example, represents obeying, right? And trusting, for that matter, as well. James chapter 1, and you could just leave your Bible open to James chapter 1 because I'm just going to use it for everything. Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, and the Lord has promised to those who love him. And of course, y'all know I love pulling stuff out of Revelation. Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. Oh, let's go back. Any other verses come to mind when we think about this particular verse of the song? Yeah, Roger.
Consider it all joy when you face various trials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which leads up to that, but.
Yeah, that one might be coming up here in a slide or two. Yeah, Len.
There's Romans 8:28 as well.
That's a good one.
All things work together for good to those who are called according to his will.
Yeah. Now, we might not understand what the good thing is that's going to happen as a result of whatever we're facing, but it will, it does. Looking at the clock, so I'm going to move on to verse 4. But we never can prove the delights of his love until all on the altar we lay. For the favor he shows and the joy he bestows are for those who trust and obey. Okay, so when they talk about, like, a lot of you I know are whiskey drinkers, and you always go look at the bottle, and it says proof on it, and it says 40 proof. What that is it's a unit of measure for how much alcohol is in the bottle. And what that came from is they would proof the alcohol. They would find out, when they made it, they would find out by doing a test how much alcohol was in it. When they refine gold, what do? They put it in something and they melt it so all of the gook in the gold that made it bigger than it really was comes off. So they prove it out. They swipe all that stuff out. When we build parts at work, a lot of the times after we build them, we'll pull and push on them to make sure they don't break, to make sure there wasn't some defect before we put it on the airplane. We prove that part. So we can't prove the delights of his love until all on the altar we lay. So until we give ourselves over, just completely up, have we proved ourselves? That's the question, right? Psalm 26. Examine me, O Lord, and prove me. Try my mind and my heart. For your loving kindness is before my eyes, and I have walked in your truth. He's saying, I'm open, I'm willing, right? James chapter 1. Therefore, lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. So who are we deceiving when we hear the word but we don't do it? Ourselves. You can fool me pretty easy. I can fool you pretty easy. And you can fool yourself pretty easy. But who can you not fool? Let's see. I got another slide on this one. So, Hosea chapter 6, and this is quoted in the New Testament, but I pulled it out from Hosea. For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. God really wants us to be merciful to other people. That's part of the obeying part. Do you have something?
Yeah, so that's the key, his attributes. When we can learn and we see what he long suffering, I mean, with 29,000 zero, O's in it. His attributes are beyond anything that we can understand until we have to demonstrate that to somebody else. And then, man, once we start learning how to, when somebody says something or conversations are, oh man, is really trying, and we think about what God is when he looked at me and he went, oh, Rick, dude, you need to shut up, dude. Get it, have some mercy here, pal, because I've had some with you. And we have to remember that.
Okay, my last thought question. Are we really obeying God when we, as a bunch of rich Americans, make our plans? And I didn't say trusting in God, I said obeying God. How many of us make plans? How many of us look at our 401k, figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to spend our money and how we're going to enjoy our lives? Are we obeying when we act like that? Now, I will admit, I looked at my 401k today. I'm just going to be honest, I did. But do we think that way? In Matthew chapter 19, I'll just read it. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Assuredly I say to you that it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." Okay. When it says rich man there, it means American. Every single person in this room is rich in comparison to the people he was talking about. Now, I know there's some of us are not as well off as others, and there's a spectrum. But even the poorest among us is rich in this scenario. So we got to think about this. I have to think about this when I'm obeying. Am I obeying by being liberal with the things that God has given me? Questions, comments? Mitchell, you're crazy. I'm keeping it all for myself. Okay, but Jesus, of course, says, with men it's impossible, with God all things are possible. How is it possible for us rich Americans to get into heaven? Trust and obey. Yeah, okay. Okay, this one, I know I'm hitting it hard, but this is something that now there are some members of our congregation who have gone out of their way to adopt orphans into their home and take care of them and take on that burden for the life of a child. And that's just a wonderful thing. Some of us aren't doing that, and maybe that's okay, but are we giving to the poor? Are we doing the things that are talked about in James chapter 1, verse 27? Do we visit the widows in their troubles? Do we go and talk to sick people who are shut-ins? There are a lot of people that could use encouragement of just somebody different. Brothers and sisters, there are people that we see and are exposed to that have like zero human interaction outside of when they go to the supermarket or come to church. And if you go visit them and go see them, you just light up their world. Something we can do. Okay, so we get to the last verse. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm not going to skip this verse. This has always been my favorite verse, and I'm just going to be honest. Because when you get to, in Fellowship Suite, you're on the last one, and you've made it. The song is almost over. And when I was a little kid, I was like, man, this song is so long. It's got 5 verses. But now it's my favorite verse for another reason, because let's read it. Then in Fellowship Suite, we will sit at his feet, or we'll walk by his side in the way. What he says we will do, where he sends we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. I like this one. Psalm 23 again. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What a great thought. This is the message, 1 John chapter 1, verse 5. This is the message which we have heard from him and declare to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his son, cleanses us from sin. Isn't that a wonderful thought? We talk about, like, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and all that kind of stuff in that phrase. But with Christ, it's not the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the light that surrounds us. We don't have to wait. The light surrounds us because we're trusting and obeying. Revelation chapter 21, verse 2. Then I, John, saw a holy city, a new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Isn't that a great thing to look forward to? So if you go talk to a Buddhist person, they tell you to meditate, to block out everything, and to control your thoughts by not thinking about anything. That's part of meditation. We should meditate, but we should meditate on his word and meditate on this thing that we have in the future, this thing that we have now, being in God, because he lights our path and he comforts us. Any final comments? We got one more minute. Roger.
For the joy set before him, Jesus was able to endure even the cross.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope that this song has helped us to think about the words of this song. And for me, it's very instructional. And it helps me to understand that my job is just to trust and obey. When I don't know what's going on, or I get surrounded by things, I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. What I need to do is stop and just trust in God and obey. And that will help me to decide what I need to do if I just do what I'm supposed to do in following his path. Okay, well, the bell is supposed to ring, but I'm just going to end it now. Thank you all for your kind attention. Oh, not by that clock.